It's going from bad to worse for the UK Prime Minister Liz Truss. In fact, the only time it was okay for her was just after the Queen signed her in, and then it was all about the Queen's funeral for the next 2 weeks after backflipping on a widely unpopular budget, which was going to deliver tax cuts for the top earners. The new PM is now struggling to keep a grip on the Tory party. Here's the latest from Sky News UK.
The cost of that massive U-turn could be huge, but for now, no regrets.
Frankly, the 45p wasn't a priority policy, and I listened to people, and I think there's absolutely no shame, Beth, in a leader listening to people and responding.
Prime Minister, you've been in power for 28 days, but 10 of those politics was paused. In 18 days then, you announced £45 billion of tax cuts without setting a fiscal framework. The pound tanked. You established a 33-point lead for Labour in the polls, and now the lady not for turning has announced a massive U-turn on a policy. This is surely the worst start of any Prime Minister.
Well, let's remember what we were facing 4 weeks ago. Families having energy bills of up to £6,000. And what we have done as a government is acted decisively.
But that is an uphill task. The polls are terrible, the party's disunited, and this PM's in trouble.
Let's cross to London now and catch up with the man who was Australia's longest-serving Foreign Minister, Alexander Downer. Thanks for joining us, Alexander. Look, I don't think we've ever seen a Prime Minister, the leader of any nation, start off so badly in their first month. What do you make of Liz Truss's credentials, and do you think she can recover from this?
Well, I think, to be honest, she's, first of all, never been a great popular public figure, nor, for that matter, being terribly well known by the public. So she came into office in controversial circumstances with the resignation of Boris Johnson, or the forced resignation of Boris Johnson. So a lot of Conservative voters were very unhappy about Boris being forced out. Secondly, she introduced an unfunded budget. So that didn't, by the way, just include tax cuts. There are tax cuts for everybody in it, not just the highest income earners. But it also introduced a huge spending package designed to underwrite the price of energy. I mean, we won't know how much that will cost, but it's estimated it could cost something in the vicinity of £60 billion in 1 year. So with the tax cuts, and there are a lot of tax cuts, a lot of different tax cuts, and the energy support component of the package unfunded, that, needless to say, led to uproar. And then, to add insult to injury, it was obvious the Conservative Party's parliamentary members weren't going to support the abolition of the highest rated tax. So she had to U-turn on that. So, it's just been a list of catastrophes, and it's hard to see how this is all going to end up happily.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that spending, deficit-funded spending to subsidise energy bills in the UK is actually more of a problem for the UK government and is getting less attention in Australia, because everyone's here trying to ignore that energy crisis because we're heading down the same path. But it's definitely linked to the UK mismanagement of energy policies. I want to duck across to Europe. I know you're a bit of an Italophile, and I want to see whether you can find anything a little bit more redeeming in what's happening there, because Giorgia Meloni, of course, is portrayed by the political left and much of the media as some sort of far-right sort of neo-fascist. But she talks about a lot of the issues that you would have espoused during the Howard government years, and she looks like a breath of fresh air.
Right. She, well, first of all, what happens in politics is, after a while, the public catch on to the contradictions of the establishment and the contradictions of the government of the day. Just to go back to the UK, the British government is spending something like £60 billion on subsidising people's energy bills, but at the same time, it imposes a whole series of taxes on people's energy bills as green levies. So the contradiction is absurd. And people like Giorgia Meloni have benefited from governments having absurd policies like this, not, of course, the British government in her case. And she stands, of course, for very traditional family values in an era that has become increasingly, if you like, woke, as they like to say. So she talks about bringing up children in two-parent families being optimal. And she's a woman. There's no question about her being a woman. She makes that point as well. She's quite nationalistic and sceptical of being bullied by the European Union, by the bureaucrats in Brussels. So in that circumstance, the one thing I've left out is immigration, illegal migrants flooding into Italy and being allowed to stay by the lawyers. The whole of Italy's immigration policy being trashed, really, by European institutions of one kind or another. So she's elected as a reaction to some of those negative things, and she has her own sort of positive, traditional, conservative agenda. So I'm not surprised she's done so well, actually.
Yeah, let's hope she governs well. Won't be easy in that Italian parliament, but as you say, she's making a lot of the right noises. Thanks for joining us, Alexander. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Chris.